सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ समस्त जन कल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्म विद्वरं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्म विद्वरम्। ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवतां नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी यां ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्र रुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तं न विदुत्सुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः। ॐ श्री गणेशाय नमः। ॐ श्री सरस्वत्यै नमः। ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। Hari Om, we are in the 12th chapter, most beautiful chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which talks about Bhakti Yoga, or the path of devotion. And on the spiritual path, Narad Ji in the Narad Bhakti Sutra says that devotion is absolutely essential. You may do a lot of good karmas, karma yoga, do a lot of service. You may even get the highest knowledge. But he says, Bhakti Reva Gariyase. Bhakti is the highest. Because without bhakti, without love for God, without devotion, you will not know how to serve or whom to serve. So with the knowledge, I come to know who I am serving. And then how to serve is taught to us by Karma Yoga. So without love, your path in the spiritual journey will be incomplete. And so that's why the 12th chapter is given a lot of importance in this 18 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. It is also the last of the 7 chapters which describes Bhagwan's nature. From 7th to 11th, we have heard about who God is. And in the 12th, how I can develop love or devotion for this Bhagwan. So the 12th chapter starts with Arjuna's question. A lot of chapters do that because Arjuna, as we can see, is a very attentive student. For us, every chapter is start afresh. I don't remember anything about what the last chapter said, but Arjuna is a very attentive student, and every time he asks a very pertinent question which relates to previous chapters. And so he starts with, एवं सतत युक्ता ये भक्तास्त्वां पर्युपासते ये चाप्यक्षरम avyaktam tesham ke yoga vittamaha. So he says, I have seen people worship you with form, and he has seen the cosmic form in the 11th chapter, the Virat Rupa. And then also in the Upanishads, he has heard about worshipping the formless. And in the 8th chapter, Bhagavan talks about Kavim, Purana, Manusha, Sitaram, all the qualities of the formless Brahman. So he says, out of them, Tesham ke yoga vittama, who is superior, who is a better devotee. And so Bhagavan answers, first praising the devotee worshipping the form. He says, Maya Veshya Mano Ye Mam Nitya Yukta Upasate Shraddhaya Parayo Petaha. So those who worship me, all their mind constantly in me as the form, as Bhagavan Shri Krishna, with Shraddha, with total faith and devotion, they, in my opinion, are superior. But how about the formless? Then Bhagavan spends 2 or 3 shlokas talking about the formless. He says, Yetu aksharam nirdeshyam avyaktam paryupasate sarvatra gama chintyancha utastham achalam dhruvam. So he says, this formless is akshara, is indestructible. You cannot think about it, achintyam. Anirdeshyam, you cannot point it, you cannot indicate it, but that also is a supreme goal of many devotees. And he says, for that, what do you have to have? You have to have sanniyamya indriya gramam sarvatra samabuddhaya te prapnuvanti mameva sarva bhuta hite rataha. So he says, to meditate on the formless, also on the form, you need to control your senses. And sarvatra samabuddhaya, and remain equanimous. Don't let your mind wander here and there. And then how do you reach me? As all. Sarva bhuta hite rataha. So a true devotee of God, whether he's worshipping form or formless, has to see that divine power in everybody and serve everybody as a manifestation of God. And then Bhagavan cautions us, klesho adhik taras tesham avyakta sakta chetasam avyakta hi gatir dukkham deha vadbhira bapyate. So he says, those who are so identified with the body that I am this body, and for them to worship the formless is very difficult. Klesha. Why? Because the formless is everywhere, all pervading. If I say I am an individual body, then it is easier for me to associate with God with form. Because if I have form, then God has a form. It can be Sri Krishna, Lord Shiva, Mother Durga, Jesus, whatever form we take, consider as the reality. I associate with form, but slowly, Bhagavan says, form should lead you to the formless, where you see me everywhere, see me in all. And so this is what we have come to so far in the 12th chapter. Now we'll continue where Bhagavan again will come back to worshipping with form. So the next 2 shlokas are meant for those who want to worship God with form. But as we shall see, all of these shlokas can apply equally to either. Whether you worship God with form or formless, the goal is one. And that is total identification with that, where that alone is everything. And I am not separate from this totality. So that is the essence of this 12th chapter, the essence of all spiritual practices, whether it's karma yoga, whether it's bhakti, whether it's jnana, whatever path you take, ultimately the oneness has to be reached. So we'll chant shloka number 6. Ye tu sarvani karmani.
Ye tu sarvani karmani.
Mai sanyasya matparaha.
Mai samyasya matparaha.
Ananyenaiva yogena.
Ananyenaiva yogena.
Mam dhyayanta upasate.
Mam dhyayanta upasate.
Together. Ye tu sarvani karmani mai sanyasya matparaha ananyenaiva yogena mam dhyayanta upasate. So he says, what two means? On the other hand, those who are worshipping me with form, what do they do? Ye, what do they do? Sarvani karmani, all activities. And where do they offer them? Mai sanyasya, renouncing all activities in me. Me here, Bhagwan, what he means, not only Bhagwan as the Sri Krishna, but Bhagwan as the total reality. Mat paraha, and making me their supreme goal. And how do they connect with me? Ananyena eva yogena eva. Ananyena eva yogena. Only one goal they have, only one purpose they have, ananya, no others. Anya means others. Ananya means no other goal, no other connection. They only connect with me. And then last, Bhagavan says, Mam dhyayanta, they meditate upon me, and upasate, and they worship me. They are always close to me. So this beautiful short shloka gives us very, very practical, very easy guidelines to follow. So first he says, renouncing all actions in me or offering all actions to me. So how do I offer all my actions to God? People always say, well, how to do that? Offering a flower is easy. See, I go to the temple, I take a flower and put it at the altar, or offer a fruit as a prasad in my prayer room, and then I eat that. That is easy to offer, or a material object, or you may even write a check. Okay, I offer this to the Lord as a service. But how do I offer my actions? So they say offering action means what Bhagwan has already covered in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th chapter as karma yoga and karma sannyas. So I offer all actions to God. What it means is that every action I dedicate to God. I am not the doer, God alone is doing it. And every action of mine becomes a yajna, becomes an offering. So I adopt a higher altar. Not only me, myself, and my family, but increase the level. For example, somebody is working for the nation. He says, I'm working for the nation, or I'm working for my community or my society. So he's sinking his small me into the higher. So the highest altar is the Lord. When once you identify with God, then what happens is my every action is identified with God, and I am working for God. So that becomes my total understanding. An example is, say somebody is working for IBM or working for PG&E. So what happens on his stationery? It says IBM when he writes letters to anybody. PG&E, his truck will say PG&E, his jacket will say PG&E, so that he should never forget that he represents PG&E. Suppose this person from IBM goes and signs a contract with some other company, or even goes to another country, to England, and signs a contract on behalf of IBM. The whole company is standing behind him because he's a sales manager. He has authority to sign the contracts. So similarly, when we dedicate our actions to God, what it means is that God is behind me and all actions I'm doing for him. So then I am no longer working, just as that IBM representative doesn't say I am there. IBM is here working through me. So similarly, this devotee becomes identified with the higher. And then his actions are not just for me, myself, and I, but for generations to come. A true devotee of God, if we see the lives of great Mahatmas, Ved Vyasji, when he compiled the Vedas, and what he accomplished in one lifetime, I mean, it would take 100 lifetimes for anybody else to accomplish. And generations of people have benefited from how he organized the knowledge. What Gurudev Swami Chinmayananda has done, where he has established so many centers and so many places this knowledge is being taught, and will always continue through his Sandipani school. So when these great masters think, they think of the future, not only of this generation. So what one has to do is develop an identification with God where there is oneness. I am not separate. And when such a person goes, then you can see that God himself is appearing. And so when you are connected with the higher, then you are able to associate and function with that. A similar thing happened to our family when we went to Australia. This was around the year 2000. And me and our Niru and our kids, we were in Melbourne, and we decided we'll just visit the Chinmaya Mission Center. And we didn't know anybody. We had no appointment. We just happened to show up. And the moment we said we are from Chinmaya Mission Bakersfield, they made us so welcome. Oh, come on in, come on in. We are so happy. And it so happened Swami Swarupananda ji was the Acharya, who is the worldwide head. And he welcomed us, and he made us, stay for lunch. And there was the youth camp going on. So the point is that once you sync your individuality and identify with the higher, then the higher functions through you. Then you become an agent of that. And the best example is Hanumanji in the Ramayana, because we can see how in Hanumanji's life, he never said, I am Hanuman. He said, I am Ram Bhakta. I am Ram Duta. Never he ever said that I am doing it. He said Ram Chandraji. In fact, at one place they asked him, how could you fly over the ocean to Sri Lanka from India? And he said, I didn't fly. I am just an arrow. An arrow doesn't do anything. It is the bowman who with the bow shoots the arrow and decides where the arrow will go. So Ramchandraji is my bowman, and he is the one who has sent me here. And it is his power with which I am flying, though Hanumanji had the ability to fly, but he never thought that I am the doer. He always dedicated his actions to Bhagwan. So the example they give is like, say, a person is going to medical school and wants to become a doctor. So they say, why do you want to become a doctor? So he says, you know what, doctors, I can make a lot of money. I'll be successful. I'll have a big house on the country club. And that is one motive. Another child is asked, why do you want to become a doctor? He says, my country needs more doctors. There's a shortage of doctors in Bakersfield. So I want to become a doctor, study at Kern Medical Center so I can serve the community of Bakersfield. Now, both are doing the same job, and the end result will probably be the same. They both will make approximately equal money, but the motive is so different. One's purpose is, what can I get out of this profession? And another's purpose is, what can I give to this profession? So that's why offering is mental. It is physically, you may do the same action, but in the mind, how am I connected with God? And what they say, ananya, no other, because in our mind, God is always somebody else, some else God. So Gurudev in his commentary says, ananya means two meanings. One is that for me, beside God, there is no other goal. Na anya, there is no other goal except God. That is one ananya meaning. Second meaning, Gurudev says, that once I have decided God is my goal, then my mind should not go to anya, na anya. So my mind should be ananya. So mind should be focused on that goal. So that is called ananya. That is explained. That word Bhagavan Shri Krishna uses many times in the Bhagavad Gita, where he talks about single-pointed devotion. Yeah, like kayena vacha manasendriyeva, that all my activities I dedicate to Bhagwan Shri Narayana. And then Bhagwan says, meditate. So meditate upon me as the form, and upasana, and sit next to me. Upa means near, asana means sit. So sitting means physically, yes, you can sit next to God in that next to your, that idol in the temple, but it is more a mental closeness. Upasana means mentally I am sitting close to God. And then there is no conflict in such an individual's mind as to what I should do, what I should not do. Our mind is always conflicting between what is selfish and what is unselfish. What is I'm doing for me? What am I doing for others? But a true devotee sees his God everywhere, or her God, and then never such a mind wanders. And the person gives total importance in his or her life to this divine form, which we'll also talk about in the couple of subsequent verses. So what is the most important thing for this individual? So this reminds me of a story. This man had taken his wife to the salon and she was getting her haircut, and he finds a magazine, there, which has a nice picture of a men's haircut. And he wants to get the same haircut next week from his barber. In those days, they didn't have cameras where you could take a picture. So he asked the lady running the salon, can I take the magazine next door? There's a print shop, Kinko's. I'll make a copy and I'll bring the magazine back because I want this haircut for myself. So she says, okay, you can take it. But she says, but leave a credit card or a driver's license. He says, leave a credit card. My wife is here getting a haircut. You don't think I'll bring the magazine back? She says, no, I want you to leave something that you will come back to collect. That you will really want back. So it's okay. I mostly make joke of men, so it's okay to once in a while to make joke. But it works both ways. So the point is that what do I give importance to in my life? What is more important? Is it what I love, or is it what I own? So that is what Bhagavan will tell us, that one who loves me in this way dedicates all his or her life to me and offers all activities to me. Then you say, what is the result? What will I get out of it? Or what is the benefit? Or iska fayda kya hai? What is the advantage? And what will you do? See, we always have a business. Okay, God, I'll do this for you. What will you do for me? So we have a very business-like mind, and Bhagavan knows us. So he says, okay, I'll tell you what I will do for you. So the next shloka, number 7, is very, very beautiful. It's quoted many times by different acharyas when they talk about what God does and how God reciprocates our love. Not that we should do it for that, but Bhagavan this shloka is like a guarantee or like an assurance for us. So verse number 7. Tesham aham samudharta.
Tesham aham samudharta.
Mrityu samsara sagarat.
Mrityu samsara sagarat.
Bhavami nachirat partha.
Bhavami nachirat partha.
Maya veshita chetasam.
Maya vesita chetasam.
Together. Tesham aham samudharta. Mrityu samsara sagarat. Bhavami nachirat partha. Maya veshita chetasam. So Bhagavan says, one who offers all his karmas to me, dedicating them to me, making me the highest goal with no other goal in mind, and is always close to me. His mind is always connected with me. So what it means is not only at the seat of meditation, not only when I'm praying, but throughout the day, constantly keeping God in mind. How can we do that? So the example they give is of a mother. She may be in a party with her friends, and her 2 or 3-year-old child is running around. The boy is very hyper and running around here and there. Even though she's talking to her friends, part of her attention is there on the child. Okay, where is he? Is he not getting into trouble? I hope he's not breaking anything. So she's totally interacting with her friends, but her mind is still there. She's able to at the same time focus on both. Because people say, how can I focus on God when I'm busy at work? Take the example of the mother. So he says, for these people who have done all this and whose mind is always in me, Tesham is the sixth case of these people. Aham sam udharta. Udharta means one who lifts. Sam means one who lifts very well. Sam, the word is used for very well. Like sannyasa. When nyasa means to give up, sannyasa means to give up completely. Then people wear orange clothes. So he says, I become the lifter. I lift them from where? Mrityu Sansara Sagar. So that is one word. Samas means Mrityu Samsara Sagar. So this samsara, this world is compared to a sagar, an ocean of Mrityu, an ocean of death. And we'll talk about that, why Bhagwan calls this world Mrityu Samsara Sagar. Well, one is very obvious. Everybody is destined to die. But Bhagwan will explain that a little more. So he says, Mrityu Samsara Sagarat. Fifth case, from this ocean of samsara, which is the ocean of death, mortality, I lift them. How soon? How soon? You know, people all say, when will Bhagwan come? You know, when, how long I have to wait? When will I see him? Kab mujhe darshan honge? He says, na chirat. Na achirat. See, chira is a word in Sanskrit, which also is used in Punjabi, those who know. Chira means bada chir ho gaya. You know, it's been a long time. So na chira means without delay. So na chirat, O Partha, O Arjuna, without delay, I will come and pick you up myself from this ocean of samsara, this ocean of death. But what do you have to do? Mai aveshit chetasam. Chetasam means mind. Aveshit means place it. Having placed this mind in me. So having placed this mind in me and having done all these other actions in the previous shloka, then it becomes my responsibility to save you from this world. So here Bhagwan is saying, I will be a lifeguard because you are drowning in this ocean of samsara, and I will be the lifeguard. Now, why does he say ocean of samsara and why does he say ocean of mrityu? Because one is that everybody of us, whoever is born, is going to perish one day. Nobody is going to live forever. The causes may be different, but the end result of everybody is death. But death is of the body, and then the individuality, the jiva, the subtle body, goes and stays in heaven or hell depending on karmas, and then takes another body and another body and another body. So one death is death of the body, constant birth and death, birth and death. And they say, you know, this whole what do you call this, janjat mein, you know, janam maran ke janjat mein, the whole world is caught. How can I get out of that? How can I get out of this ocean of birth and death? So we'll understand that. And what Bhagwan is saying, that it's not that you will not die or you will not perish, but I will make you realize your immortal nature. And we'll talk about that. What is immortality? Does not mean that a saint will never perish, but saint will know that I don't perish. This body may perish, but I, as the Atma, the consciousness, am immortal. I was never born and I will never perish. Na jayate mriyate va kadachit. Death also means change. See, we all live in this ocean of change where there is a constant change. First, I was born as a baby, then I slowly grew up and became a toddler. And then from there, I went to school and I became a teenager. And then I, grew up as I went to college and, had a job and a career and a family. So when the child was there, Then the childhood died and the youthhood came, right? From a child, I became a teenager. Then the teenager perished, I became a youth. From a youth, I become middle age. And from middle age, I become older. So this constant world of change is also called Mrityu Samsara Sagara, in which I am drowning. Drowning means I don't see any escape. How can I be picked up and taken out of this ocean? Who will pick me up? So Bhagavan says, I do it. I am the lifeguard in this ocean of change. But how does he do that? In the 6th chapter, Bhagavan says, Uddaret atmanatmanam na atmanam avsadayet. He says, lift yourself by yourself and don't let yourself fall. And there he says, to lift yourself, you have to put your mind in me, and you have to reduce your selfish desires, and then your mind, which is running in many directions, have to focus it on that one me in the path of meditation, and then lift yourself by yourself. And here he's saying, I will lift you. So it seems like two incongruous statements. But if you listen to the continuing chapters, Bhagavan says, how will I lift you? He says, Tesham eva anukampartham aham ajnana jam tamaha nashayamyatma bhavasthaha jnana deepena bhasvata. In the 10th chapter, Bhagavan says, how will I lift you? Not that suddenly I'll come and put my hand on your head and you will be, lifted. I will lift you by knowledge. He says, your brain at this moment is covered in ignorance. Your mind is covered in ignorance. So out of compassion, anukampartham, aham ajnana jam tamaha, this darkness created by ignorance, nashayami atmasthaha, I am stationed in your heart, and I will remove this darkness of ignorance by the light of knowledge. Jnana deepena bhasvata. So in every chapter, Bhagavan is giving importance to knowledge. It is only through light of knowledge you can remove darkness of ignorance. Darkness, if there is darkness in the room, you cannot take a bucket and throw out buckets of darkness. You can't. All you have to do is light a small lamp and the darkness will run away. So Bhagavan says, I will light the lamp of knowledge in your heart. He says that very clearly in the 10th chapter. So that is how Bhagavan will lift us. And that's what he's doing throughout the 18 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, giving us this highest knowledge to get out of this darkness of ignorance. And that's why at the end of the class, we always chant Asato ma Satgamaya, Tamaso ma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. What it means is, from unreal, let me go to real. From temporary, let me go to permanent. Asato ma Satgamaya, Tamaso ma Jyotirgamaya. From darkness, may I go to light, which is what we just talked about. And Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya, may I realize my immortal nature. So that is the essence of this knowledge. And why does the mind get caught in objects, and how can I change my mind's focus from objects to Bhagwan? So when we talk about the form of God, the mind takes what's called a vritti. Vritti means, now suppose I tell you all, okay, think about elephant. And what will happen? Your mind will get a vritti of an elephant, right? A big gray figure shape. Or I say, think of a pot, and you will think of a brown pot or a blue pot. So the mind is getting the shape of the object that it is thinking. So when I tell you, think of Bhagavan Shri Krishna, then immediately your mind fills with that vritti. So the more you focus your mind in the form of God, then the more and more your mind gets filled with that. Our problem is that our mind is only filled with objects, with things. What I have, and there's a very nice story I have about that. So we are focused on things and beings and we don't have time to think about God. So the vritti, the divine vritti doesn't come, that thought doesn't become strong. And that's what Bhagavan says, na chirat, I'll do it quickly. You don't have to wait very long. And I was reading a very beautiful instance about a great French philosopher. His name was Blaise Pascal. And in his meditation, he was very profound. And he had studied the Upanishads and the other scriptures. And in his meditation, he disappeared. And for 2 hours, his mind was 100% with God. He was lost. And then he woke up from his meditation. He couldn't sit all day, and then he had to go. And then his mind was so disturbed. Oh God, you have forsaken me. How can I get you back? Am I never going to be able to see you again? His mind was agitated and disturbed all day. And then suddenly the Upanishad message came to him, renunciation, total and sweet. So total renunciation of everything else and holding on to the sweet form of the Lord. So renunciation does not mean you are forced to give up. Or you mean to say in Vedanta, we can't enjoy life, we can't have fun. No, we are not saying that, but give less importance to that. And not that somebody has to take it away from you. When your love for God increases, automatically this will fall off. That's why he said total and sweet renunciation, not only just total, but sweet renunciation. Without any effort, it falls off. So what are these attachments? Attachments, there's a very beautiful story of Bhagwan Sri Krishna, very, very wonderful story, and shows how Bhagwan is always teaching us. So in this incident, he was going through this area, and he found there were some villagers who were returning from the market, and they had bought a basket of mangoes, and there were about 20 mangoes. So there were too many. So the 5 villagers, each was carrying 4 mangoes back. They couldn't afford to buy the whole basket, but they shared it. And so their hands were full with mangoes, and they were coming back to the village. It was a 5-mile walk. And so while they were going, they were singing Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. They were chanting. And that bhajan, Darshan Do Ghansham Nath Mori Akhiyan Pyasi Re. Oh, when will I see you? Oh God, please come and see me. And I miss you. I want you. So Shri Krishna said, okay, I'll come. So, and he was a little mischievous. So his teaching was never straight. It's very interesting. So he comes there, and he has these 5 pots, one on top of the other, piled up. And everybody bows down. They see Bhagwan Sri Krishna, and they bow their head. Of course, their hands are holding the mangoes, so they can't fold their hand, but they bow down. Oh, Bhagwan, you are so here, so happy you are here. He says, yes, I am here, and I'm here to give you nectar of immortality. In these pots, I have the nectar of immortality, where you will become immortal. You will become one with me. So you take this pot home, and you drink slowly on the way, and also give it to your wife. She will also get immortality. So they say, Bhagwan, but how are we to hold this pot? Our hands are filled with mangoes. So he says, drop the mangoes and take this. I am giving it to you. So, and he was smiling. See, that was one thing about Bhagwan Sri Krishna. When he taught, he was always smiling, always joyful, always enthusiastic. Not, that if you go to somebody like in the 2nd chapter, he says, Prahasan niva bharata senayor ubhayor madhe vishidantam idam vacha. So when he spoke to Arjuna, Arjuna was crying in the 2nd chapter. He could also sit down and start crying. Oh, you are crying. Then the teaching will not be good. So a teacher has to be always smiling, always joyful, always happy, to create that enthusiasm in the student. And that joy. So he told Arjuna, yes, the situation is difficult, but the end result will be good. Secondly, Bhagwan Sri Krishna had this unique ability to teach at the level of the student. He never talked down. If he was talking to rishis, he would talk at their level. To Arjuna, he talked like he's talking to a soldier who has studied. And to these students, to these farmers, he talked at their level, at the level of mangoes. That's how Gurudev was. So he says, drop the mangoes and you can get this, my darshan, you can get. Say, no, Bhagwan, we can't do that. Let us go home and we'll finish the mangoes and you please come to our house and give us this nectar. So Bhagwan says they are not ready. He disappeared. So the point is that we make fun of these farmers for mangoes, but we are not any different. What are our mangoes? Our stock market, my money, my house, my children. Not that one should not love the children, but excessive dependence and attachment. So these are, or another difficult thing for us. The biggest mango is my opinions, my ideas, that I know more than anybody else. And if I am a Republican, all Democrats are bad. If I'm a Democrat. So we hold on to our ideas, and that is the most difficult mango to give up. Physically you could separate, but how am I going to separate from the mind? So that's what Bhagwan is telling us, that give up these tiny little attachments you have and hold on to me. And that is how I will then lift you up. So that is the gift that Bhagwan Shri Krishna gave to these farmers. And that is what he can give to us. So that's why he says, I will lift you up. It is my responsibility. But how will I lift you? With the lamp of knowledge, which I will light in your heart. So again, here he's talking about knowledge. It's not that suddenly he will come dive in the ocean and pick us up. He says, I'll give you the knowledge so you can lift yourself up. Again, he's coming back to the sixth chapter, Udaret Atmanat. But I will give you the knowledge. So that is what, beautiful, beautiful shlokas. It was such a pleasure last night when I was thinking about them. My mind was so filled with joy. I'm so blessed to have this opportunity to share with all of you. I just want to thank you all. So we'll go to verse number 8, where Bhagwan will, from 8 to 12, these 5 verses are connected, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, where the Lord tells us that what are the steps you can take to reach me. And then if you say, I can't do that, it's too difficult, he said, okay, I'll give you an easier one. Oh, that is still difficult, I'll give you an easier one. So slowly, Bhagwan is giving us all steps that you can take from the difficult to the easiest. And how? He says, and according to your interest, according to your mind, according to your abilities, you can pick any of these 5. So very, very beautifully. Actually, there are 4, and in the 5th one, he compares them all. So the first one is the put your mind in me and how you can live in me. So that is verse number 8. And then after that, next time we'll talk about the other 3 paths, other 3 methods of reaching God. So verse number 8. Mayyeva mana adatsva.
Mayyeva mana adatsva.
Mayi buddhim niveshaya.
Mayi buddhim niveshaya.
Nivasishyasi mayyeva.
Nivasisyashi mayyeva.
Ata urdhvam na samshayaha.
Ata urdhvam na samshayaha.
So Mai, in me, it is the 7th, oh, together, sorry, yeah. Mayyeva mana adatsva. Mai buddhim niveshaya. Nivasishyasi mayyeva. Ata urdhvam na samshayaha. So Mai eva. Mai is the 7th case. Mai eva, in me alone. Mana adhatsva. Adhatsva means place your mind firmly, completely in me and me alone, not in 1,000 other things. And then mind I do, but my intellect, what about the intellect? And so Bhagwan says, Mai buddhim niveshaya. Place your intellect also in me. So in the first one, he says, put your mind firmly in me. Second one, he says, also place your intellect in me. Yeah, okay, if I do, then what will happen? What will be the benefit? So Bhagavan, throughout the Bhagavad Gita, not only tells what to do, but what is the benefit of doing it. And then if you don't do it, what will be the harm, consequences? Here he doesn't say it, but in many other shlokas he does. So he says, if you place your mind and intellect in me, nivasishyasi, this is the future tense. Nivasa means to abide, to live. You know, they say like in Shanti Nivas, you know, they have different names of homes in India. So nivasishyasi, you will live in me alone, mai eva ata urdhvam. Ata urdhvam is the same as what he said, na chirat. In the previous shloka, he said na chirat. Here he says ata urdhvam. Ata urdhvam means after this, there's not going to be much delay. Once you do this, once you place your mind in me, once you have your intellect also in me, then you will live in me not with much delay. And na samshaya, there is no doubt. He is giving a guarantee. As we said before, it's not only guarantee of 1 year or 5 years, it is lifetime, it is a guarantee of multiple lifetimes. Once you become one with me, then you have no more lifetimes. Then you and I are eternally one. Actually, even right now, we are one with God. But what happens is that because of the darkness of ignorance, we don't see the light of God within us, and our attention is on the world. So all Bhagavan is saying, I will light the lamp of knowledge. I have already given you the knowledge. What you have to do is shift your attention from all things to me. So there is no doubt. There is nothing to worry about. Now, our idea of this world is that I am driving. See, I am doing everything. You know, that is our idea, that it is because of me, everything is happening. You know, I am so great. I have done so much. So the example I read is that it's like, you know, these go-kart, if you have gone to these fairs and they have these go-kart where the child is sitting in front and he has the steering, and child may be 2 or 3 years old, but the real person driving is the father or the mother, and she is controlling the steering and the speed and everything. But the child thinks, I am driving. And, you know, he said, oh, I'm going so fast, I'm turning. So you and I are like that child, like we think, you know, we are running this world. I am doing everything. I am this, you know, so great. So yeah, like in Govardhan Parvat, when Bhagavan Shri Krishna lifted the mountain, all the other Gopas came and put their stick, thinking we are helping God. So we are like that child who thinks he is driving. Actually, God is running everything. Everything is happening because of God. But you and I, out of ignorance, think we are doing it. I am the driver. I am the one who controls my life. It is God who gives us the ability. So always be thankful. And why does he say mana and buddhi? Because mana is defined as sankalpa, vikalpa, atmaka mana, also called samshayatmika mana. So mind is the one that always has doubts. Sankalpa, vikalpa. Should I do this? Should I not do this? Is this right? This is wrong. And buddhi is says to be nishchayatmika, one that has the decisions. But this buddhi, this intellect, has to be guided by scriptures. People say, I have decided. How have you decided? Based on my own understanding. No, understanding should come through the scriptures, through the guru. And when such an intellect is functioning in the world and guiding the mind, then the mind is guided in the right direction. So that is what they're saying. Gurudev in his commentary says the mind focuses on the form and the buddhi penetrates through the form to the formless, to the essence, through the truth, to the formless. So the essence of the form of God is the formless reality. So with the mind, love the form. With the intellect, go beyond the form to the totality, to the formless. So one very beautiful method, I was listening to Swami Bodhatmananda ji when he was talking. He says, include me. No, what do you mean include me? Like say you are planning your vacation, right? Okay, we have 1 week vacation. So are we going to Yosemite, or should we go to Hawaii, or should we go to 1 week spiritual retreat? Now all three options are there. Or should we go to a Chenmaya camp? We used to take our children to 1 week camp. So he says, include me. You don't have to go to the camp. You don't have to go to the retreat. You can go to Hawaii. You can go to Yellowstone. But at least you thought about me. I was one of the options. At least wo to tha na? Yeah. The same way do that. Like in life, we have so many goals. I have to make money. I have to have a nice job. I have to take care of my family, my children, my grandchildren. I have to fix my house. I have to fix my paperwork. I have to file my taxes. Okay, all of those. And the 10th one, you say, I have to reach God. Out of 10, make one me. At least ek to you put out of 10 goals you have in life. Can you put one as reaching God? Yeah, that I can give you, Bhagwan. 8 out of 10 is not bad. At least I have 9 others. But Gurudev says, he says, spirituality is a one-way street. Once you get in there, you can't get out. There is no return. Because once you taste the fruit of this sweet nectar of immortality that Bhagwan Shri Krishna is giving, then you won't want anything else. And slowly, 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 you will drop your mangoes and hold on to that part. And that is the essence of this teaching. He says, Atma samstham mana kritvana kinchid api chintayet. Bhagwan Shri Krishna says, once your mind is stationed in me, then it won't want to think of anything else. And that's what happens as we immerse ourselves in these teachings, the more and more, I'm sure all of you, as you read more, as you study more, as you practice more, gradually this knowledge will take over your mind. I think those who were doing Gita chanting, they were saying that by the end of it, their mind was just repeating those shlokas and again and again. And once you know the meaning, then your mind becomes single-pointed. Ekagrata, what we study in Tattva Bodh, Samadhanam, Ekagrata, that single-pointed focus of the mind is in God and God alone. And that is called live in me. What does Bhagavan say? Nivashishyasi mayeva, nivasishyasi mayeva. You will live in me alone, where you will see God everywhere. It's not that suddenly you have to leave your house and go live in Haridwar, or go live in Bethlehem or somewhere. Wherever I am living, I see God. It's like somebody said it very beautifully. They say you walk on holy ground. Holy ground does not mean I walk in Haridwar or Banaras. That is good. But even my house becomes a holy ground. Why? Because God is there. Every step I take, I am with God. So that is called. So every step when you walk, just think, I walk on holy ground. Why? Because God is with me. I am stepping on God. God is all around me. Stepping me not disrespectfully, but that he is supporting me. He is holding my legs. So constantly seeing God everywhere at all times. And then a mind will not seesaw. See, otherwise people's mind, one day it is in God, second day it is in the world. One day selfishness, second day unself. Slowly there's up and down fluctuations of the mind subside, and such a mind remains equanimous, constantly thinking about God. That's what he says, sama, the person remains equanimous all the time in God. And not only that, but in all his or her relationships, they see God, whether it's the relationship with the spouse or the children or the parents who gave us birth, or our business colleagues, our customers, our clients, whoever we deal with, to see God constantly. A great saint had said, he said, actually, he was not a saint, he was a professional, a householder. But he came up with this statement. He said, whether I'm in business dealing with my clients or whether I'm in church down on my knees praying to God, I see no difference. I see no difference between being in the temple or being in my place of business. So that is the highest understanding of these wise people, and constantly being aware of that presence. And for that, you have to give time. So you cannot say 5 minutes I did Aarti and I'm gone, or half an hour I studied, or 20 minutes I meditated, or Sunday I listened to 1 hour Bhagavad Gita, ho gaya, that's it, I'm done till next Sunday. No, throughout the week, I have to make out time for God. And for that, I have to reduce time from other activities. Certain things we have to do. We have to, of course, get up, take a bath, have breakfast, sleep, work, all those things. But then we have optional time. 2, 3, 4 hours, everybody has, optional time. It's not, we are working 8 hours a day, sleeping 6, 7 hours, and, getting ready, taking care of the body. But then there are 2, 3, 4 hours optional. And what do you do with that? They say, give more and more time to God. What we see is that people spend so much time in doing other activities. They will bike 25 miles a day, 6 hours on the bike, or they will run for 4 hours a day doing marathon, half marathon. Not that there is anything wrong with physical fitness. We are not saying that. But if you spend too much time in doing things, 1 hour, 1.5 hours, you exercise, good. But if you're going to spend 5 hours, 6 hours a day taking care of the body, then where are you going to have time for God? So especially as we mature, and especially those of us who are close to 50 or past, God should become my number one goal, because we have already done everything. We have taken care of our children. We have done our profession, and our children are in college or past, or at least in high school, in getting independent. More and more time I must devote to my spiritual journey. So that is what we have studied so far. He says, those who put their mind in me, then I lift them up, and you can choose me as form or formless. But the most important thing is your mind has to love me and your intellect has to know me. So somebody says, Bhagwan, it's too difficult. Put the mind in you, intellect in you, think about nothing else. You don't know how many problems I have. I have wife problem, I have husband problem, I have children problem, work problem, financial problem, social problem, Trump problem. I have all these problems. Where do I have time for you? So Bhagwan says, don't worry, I'll give you an easier method. Daniela asked a question. She says, when I'm on my bike, is it okay if I convey to everybody? Or this person asked that I chant a mantra. Otherwise, it is hard and boring. That is perfect. If you do that 1 hour, you are on the bike and you are chanting the mantra, that's great. But what I meant was people who spend 6, 7 hours just taking care of the body. But if you can chant the mantra for an hour, that is perfect. That is meditation. And hats off to if you can do that, that's very good. So that is the essence of these teachings. So Bhagwan in the next 3 shlokas will give us a simpler methods. If you can't put your mind and intellect on me, then what you should do. If you can't do that, what you should do, So 4 different methods of reaching God he has given us, because God is very compassionate, very kind. That's why he says, Tesham eva anukampartham, with total compassion, he teaches us. So we have time. If anybody would like to add or ask any questions or contribute.
Dr. Mehta, I wanted to ask you, because when I'm on the bike, as I said, that's easy because my mind is not engaged in something else. So I can engage my mind into just chanting the mantra and being with God. But when I'm in another activity that my mind is solicited, I cannot just not think. I have to teach, or I have to, how can I have behind my mind God at that time?
Yeah. So, but I think even the fact that you are keeping 1 hour, that's tremendous. That's very good. I can't do that. So if you can do that, that is very, very good. But what happens is that slowly, when I'm doing activities, part of your attention you keep on God. So it is like, as I said, like a mother, or another example they give, how can you keep your mind focused, is that become a witness, become a sakshi, become a witness of the mind. So slowly start practicing that I am not the mind, but I am a witness of the mind. So keep doing all your activities, but a part of you is watching the mind, as what we do in meditation. You know, you have attended meditation classes. And so in meditation, you become a witness of the mind. So as you become a witness of your mind and become a witness of all activities, whatever I'm doing, whether I'm cooking or whether I'm biking or whether I'm driving or whether I'm at work, slowly the witness, who is the witness? Who is the sakshi? The witnessing consciousness, which is reflected in the mind as the reflection of consciousness. So as you withdraw your attention from the mind and activities, you come closer to the truth. Then that is one way, you know, that is one way that you can do that, where you can separate yourself and become a witness of your activity. So then you come to understand that this witness in me is separate from the body and mind. So automatically your activities become meditative. That's number one. You can be a witness. Secondly, do every activity as a service to God. You know, like what Gandhi ji teaches us, Nar Seva is Narayana Seva, that I see God in everybody. So God is there even in the person who is hurting me, that also God is there and there is some lesson I'm learning. So see every activity as God's glory, as God's manifestation. Good or bad, whatever is happening, ultimately the God is doing it and he knows what is good for me. So take out that I am doing, say God knows what is good for me and whatever is happening is for the good. Even something bad may be happening, but in the end, we realize that what was happening was best for me. Many times I have happened in life that I wanted something and I really wanted and I didn't get it. And then a few months later, I realized that was God telling me you don't need it. And that's not, they say in one place, when God closes a window, he opens a door. So you may think the window is closed, but he has opened a much bigger door for you to progress. To grow. So always see God's hand in everything. Never lose faith in God, no matter what happens in life, no matter how many problems come. Remember that he loves us. He, she, God, you know, that whatever you want to, whatever form is not male or female, but that there is a divine presence that loves me, is supporting me. And everything is happening because of that presence. How am I able to talk? Because God is in me. How are we all able to listen? Because God is in us. So never forget God, never lose faith in God, and always have an attitude of gratitude. So these are slow methods of, but chanting the mantra is beautiful. Eknath Ishwaran in his teaching always says, chant the mantra wherever you go. Pick up any mantra. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost. It doesn't matter which mantra, but as long as it has God's name associated with it, that's very good. It takes you closer to the truth. So thank you for asking that question. It's very good. Thank you. I hope I was able to answer.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, Sharad?
Yes, I just had a comment on this Sarvani Karmani.
Yes.
You know, there should be no exceptions when we surrender to him. Like you stated, you know, oftentimes we go to him, and thank you for the beautiful illustration of the mangoes. That was very helpful. But not only do we hold on to the mangoes, but 99.999% of the time, and also 99.99% of us, we only go to him with our hands open and say, hey, look at all my problems.
Right.
You know, so we don't think about surrendering to him 100%, you know, so there should be no exceptions. But I do have one question. Oftentimes when we have a goal in mind, we look at if we have two different paths. So you touched on Arjuna's question on nirguna versus saguna, form and formless. So Arjuna is being told to contemplate on the form versus the formless. Sometimes when our goal, when we're discussing two paths, and the second path, let's say nirguna, is much more difficult, for someone like me, I am unable to contemplate on the formless. Does the formless have any benefits, any pros more than the form as far as the two paths are concerned?
That's a very good question. The form will lead you to the formless. You can start out by worshiping a form. There is nothing wrong with that, because it is easier for us to love a form of God, whatever form it may be. But what happens is that slowly, as your mind gets consumed, becomes one with that form, then you don't limit Bhagwan just to that one form. If you say, oh, he's only in the temple and he's not anywhere else, then you are limiting God. Or if you're saying he's only in Hindus and not in Christians, then you are becoming a fanatic. So slowly, and through reading the teachings of saints, read the lives of saints, not only the teachings, but just pick up lives of saints. Read the lives of Tukaram or Sant Gyaneshwar or Jesus or Saint Francis. That's why I try to keep giving quotations and examples of different saints, because how they filled their mind with God. So slowly what will happen is that from one form, you will see it in all form. But also Gandhiji taught us that everybody is Harijan. There is not only one caste, but everybody belongs to that highest caste. So from one form, you make him multiform. That's what in the 11th chapter, Arjuna sees Bhagwan Shri Krishna everywhere, in the heaven, in the hell, in the, in the good, in the bad, everywhere. He sees that. And then slowly what will happen is that you will realize that if God is everywhere, cannot have a limited form. If God is everywhere, you cannot limit him that he's only in a particular form, only in a particular shape, only in a particular place. So also by studying and, especially studying Upanishads or the advanced texts, even Vivek Chudamani we are doing on Wednesday, even Tattva Bodh, even though it's an introductory test, will take us to the highest teaching, that what is Atma, Atma Kaha, we already saw that. So as you realize that God is not outside, but is in me as Atma, as this consciousness, and that consciousness is everywhere. You cannot limit God to just one place, within and without. In fact, the whole universe is in him, in God. It's not that God is in space. Space is in God. Heaven, hells, all the 14 worlds, they all are in God. So if everything is in God, God has to be formless. So automatically, as you widen your thinking, this formless will come. And by repeated studying, I think study is very important, which we are doing. We have several classes throughout the week. So the more you study, the more you meditate upon it, and the more you internalize this knowledge and make this knowledge yours and internalize God. God is not outside. God is my life principle, the consciousness within. Slowly, the teaching, the form will lead you to the formless. You say, Asatoma Satgamaya. You are asking God, from the temporary, take me to the permanent, from the darkness to light, from mortality to immortality. And then God says, it is my job. He already said that. Tesham aham samuddarta. I will do it. All you have to do is think about me all the time and then leave the rest to me. In the 9th chapter, he says, na yoga kshemam vahamyaham. Then I take care of. We just finished 9th chapter. Ananyas chintayanto mam ye jana paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yoga kshemam vahamyaham. Those whose mind is always in me, then I take care of them. So surrender yourself.
Somebody asked this question to Raman Maharishi ji.
Right.
So he said, if you have a form, then God has a form. If you don't have a form, then God also doesn't. Exactly. So that is what. So right now, because we are, we think we are this body, we are this mind, and then you make God as a, God is also a form for you. So that is what was his answer. So like you said, the form will lead you to the formless. So as our knowledge grows, it will,
yes.
so.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with worshiping God with form. So please, if you're doing that, continue to do that, because God is form and formless both. And if you have love for a particular form, that's great. And slowly that the love will increase. But even no matter, even advanced teachers, they always worship form. Shankaracharya ji was the greatest Vedantin, and he always composed hymns in praise of Lord Shiva, in praise of Mother Goddess, in praise of Lord Ganesha, in praise of Lord Krishna. He was the greatest Vedantin, at the same time the greatest devotee. Swami Chidananda, who comes here from, he comes here from time to time. Even though he's a great Vedantin, he has this little small temple he carries with him, even in the plane and all, where he has this little Shiva Linga, and every morning he does prayers. So worshipping the form is best. There's nothing wrong with it. He starts with form, and then if you can go to formless, fine. If not, just see everything as my Bhagwan, and everything is happening as his blessings.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good question. Like Mirabai, like, all of the saints. That's why even Jesus said, I'm not doing anything. It's my Father in heaven who is doing it. And so he never claimed credit for anything. Never. The saints, they never say, I did it. Never. It's always God is doing it. Everything is God. Any other comments, questions?
I have one question. Can you elaborate a little bit where you said with mind love the form, and with intellect go beyond the form and go to.
So
and
Gurudev,
one more question.
Sure.
The villagers with the mango, what was it missing that they could not appreciate when the God brought them the pot? Was there the faith in that pot, and are we all not in the same boat where we are
Yes.
missing
Yes.
that a little connection? And what is that? Can you
Yeah, see,
kindly?
that's why I told the story, because we are all the villagers. And what are our mangoes? Our mangoes are our possessions and our achievements and our pride and our arrogance. And those are our mangoes that we are so filled with all that. My ego and my, I'm so great. Then we have no space for God. And so that's what these people were so attached to whatever they had, that they couldn't see what they were getting was much higher.
Our mind is so preoccupied with that. There is
Right.
no time to.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's
No
why
time.
they say you should exclusively sit,
Exclusively.
putting everything on the side and
Right.
meditation.
Right. And then mind and intellect, also Gurudev has given in his commentary. But what he says is that when your mind is completely filled with God, that vritti has become so strong
Akhanda
that you have akhandakar vritti, where I'm not separate. And when you have total love for God, then he says your intellect will go beyond the form to see the truth behind the form. When Sri Krishna is speaking as I, he does not only mean Sri Krishna as form. When he's saying I, he's talking about Ishvara, the totality. So in that particular form, I see totality. So somebody may worship Lord Shiva, or somebody Krishna, or somebody Mother Durga, or Jesus, but all of them, instead of focusing only on the form, should focus on the totality that this particular form of mind represents all.
The idol represents the ideal.
Yes, the
So
idol
that's-
represents the ideal. Yes, sorry, go ahead.
The idol represents the ideal. So it is the ideal which is behind each form,
Right.
the essence.
Right, the ideal behind the idol. Right. Gurudev says that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Idol.
Om na tatra suryo bhati na chandra tarakam nema vidyuto bhanti kuto yam agnihi tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam tasya bhasha sarvam idam vivabhati. Om Arati Shri Chinmaya Sadguru ki Divya Rupa Murati Karuna ki Arati Sadguru ki Arati Sadguru ki चरणों में उनके शांति समाये शरणागत की भ्रांति मिटाए, पाप ताप संताप हरण की। आरती श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरु की, आरती सद्गुरु की। वेद उपनिषद गीता को गाया, धर्म सनातन फिर से जगाया। शुद्ध नीति प्रीति शंकर की, आरती श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरु की, आरती सद्गुरु की। सिद्ध बार की तपोभूमि में, नित्य विराजे गुरु हमारे। भक्त हृदय आनंद स्रोत की, आरती श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरु की, आरती सद्गुरु की, आरती सद्गुरु की।
बोलिए श्री
बोलिए
कृष्ण
श्री
चंद्र।
सद्गुरु,
Go ahead,
बोलिए
sorry.
श्री, बोलियो श्री कृष्ण भगवान की जय, बोलियो श्री सद्गुरुनाथ महाराज की जय। कायेन वाचा मनसेन्द्रियेवा बुद्ध्यात्मना वा प्रकृते स्वभावात् करोमि यद्यत् सकलं परस्मै नारायणायेति समर्पयामि, नारायणायेति समर्पयामि। सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु निरामयः, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय, तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय, मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। हरि ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। Hari Om.
Okay, thank you very much. Hari Om. We'll all take the Aarti, please.